In a bustling, often overlooked neighborhood, there was a small noodle shop called Lee's Kitchen. But to the community, it was so much more than just a restaurant. It was a cornerstone, a gathering place run by the warm and dedicated Mr. Jian Lee. At 55, Mr. Lee, a Chinese immigrant, had poured his life into this shop. It was his retirement plan, his way of supporting his family and his passion. His hand-pulled noodles and rich, authentic broth were legendary. He wasn't just a business owner. He was an employer to local teenagers and a pillar of his community. Mr. Lee was meticulous. He took immense pride in his shop, constantly investing his savings to keep the old building spotless and up to code. He knew the importance of health and safety, not just for regulations, but for his customers, who he treated like family. But a shadow was looming over Lee's Kitchen, one cast by a massive downtown developer named Apex Global. They had their eyes on the entire block, planning to replace the small, family-owned shops with a gleaming luxury condo project. Most owners had sold, but Mr. Lee refused. His shop was his legacy, not just a piece of property. And that's when his nightmare began. Suddenly, a new city unit, the Commercial Compliance Task Force, began showing an intense and specific interest in Lee's Kitchen. This wasn't the health department. This was a new breed of enforcer, and leading the charge on the ground was Officer Victor Diaz. His job, on paper, was to ensure safety, but in reality, it became a tool for something far more sinister. The harassment started with what Diaz called a routine inspection. But Diaz wasn't a health inspector. He was a uniformed officer there to enforce the city's labyrinth of commercial codes. The result of that first visit, 10 citations. The violations were bewilderingly trivial, almost designed to be impossible to contest. First, the exterior paint was deemed faded, contributing to community decay. That was a $500 fine. Next, the sign above his door. It was a quarter of an inch off-center, another $250. Then, the emergency shut-off valve. Mr. Lee had marked it, but Officer Diaz decided the font size was too small. That was $750. The final blow was for a lack of a certified pest control log. Mr. Lee immediately presented the logbook, but Diaz waved it away, claiming the technician's signature was illegible. A $1,000 fine. The total came to over $2,500 entire month's profit, and it was due in just 7 days. Mr. Lee, a man who had always followed the rules, was stunned. He spent the next week in a panic, dipping into his small retirement fund to pay for painters and sign adjusters, frantically trying to fix problems that felt imaginary. He was determined to comply, to prove he was a good business owner. 2 weeks later, his resolve was put to a cruel test. It was the peak of the lunch rush. The tiny kitchen was hot, filled with the wonderful smell of simmering broth, and the dining room was packed with happy customers. Diaz barely glanced at it. His eyes were scanning the kitchen, not for compliance, but for a pretext. And then he found it. He pointed to a tiny, hairline crack in a floor tile near the back door. A crack so small you would miss it if you weren't hunting for it. His English was good, but the complex legal jargon being thrown at him in this high-stress moment was overwhelming. Instinctively, he reached for his phone to call his daughter for help. This simple, human act was his undoing. Diaz saw it as a challenge. "You are interfering with a lawful regulatory action. Put that phone down now," he shouted, lunging forward and grabbing Mr. Lee's arm. Mr. Lee, terrified, pulled back. His immediate thought was of the huge boiling pot of broth on the stove next to them. He was just trying to avoid a terrible accident. But Officer Diaz didn't see a scared man trying to protect his kitchen. He saw an opportunity. That small, defensive jerk was all the justification he needed. Assaulting a compliance officer, Diaz bellowed. In a swift, brutal movement, he twisted Mr. Lee's arm painfully behind his back, shoving the 55-year-old man against a hot stainless steel counter. The sizzle of the heat was lost in the chaos. In front of his shocked customers and terrified young employees, Mr. Jian Lee, a respected community elder, was handcuffed, his noodle-stained apron still tied around his waist. He was paraded out of his own restaurant like a criminal. The moment he was gone, the task force slapped a large red closed sign on the front door. The official reasons cited were the tiny floor crack and the alleged assault. This was never about a crack in the floor. This was never about safety. The fines were quadrupled. His shop, the source of his entire livelihood, was shuttered. While he was forced to fight the bogus obstruction charges, his business bled out. The developer's path was now clear. Mr. Lee wasn't just fined, he was systematically and deliberately crushed. The real weapon wasn't the citation book, it was the power to close the door. The arrest wasn't the goal, the closure was the true act of brutality, an economic demolition carried out by those sworn to protect it. This is how a beloved community kitchen was erased, not by market forces, but by the misuse of power. All for a developer's profit. Thank you for watching. If this story moved you, please like, share, and subscribe to our channel to help bring more hidden stories like this to light.